Hey everybody, welcome to Inside Gooners Extra. We had to jump on. We've got to discuss the big news. Arsenal are moving closer and closer to completing a deal for Eberechi Eze. This is one that earlier in the summer, I think people were excited about the prospect of. It didn't feel like it was going to materialise, but just when Tottenham thought they'd got their man, just when Tottenham thought they were about to get this over the line, in swoop Arsenal, and they've taken away a brilliant player from under the noses of their rivals. I'm delighted to say that Rory Talks Football is with me. Rory, let's get your initial reaction to this. I guess you can tell by the smile on my face. I'm absolutely buzzing with this.
Yeah, honestly, the last I don't know what 12, 14 hours just smiling and laughing the whole time. It's been it's been joyful, and I think because of where we were this time yesterday, where we'd had the Havertz news, didn't know how bad that was going to be, and there had been no links to anyone, and there was kind of few reports saying that maybe Arsenal look into the loan market or if there's any bargains. It kind of felt like, we've heard this before with Arsenal. And so then, yeah, for that David Ornstein tweet to come out of absolutely nowhere, and just the speed at which it then developed is incredible. And like you said, it felt like Eze was really on the cards earlier in the window. Then it had fizzled out. Then he was going to Spurs. It looked pretty much wrapped up. And then, we've got in there right at the end.
We have indeed. I mean, do you think that this is something that's been driven largely by the Kai Havertz injury? Does it kind of give you a bad feeling about that injury and how serious it might be for Arsenal to have done this? Or do you think that this is something that was on the cards anyway, and maybe this was just something that gave Arsenal a little bit of a push in that direction rather than completely changing the plans?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. I've seen a few bits and pieces this morning suggesting that actually maybe the deal was on the cards before yesterday, and that maybe Havertz tipped it over the edge, but actually we were always going to come back in. Spurs feel like Palace were delaying deliberately because the deal was kind of in place with both parties, and yet it just kept getting delayed and delayed, which allowed us to come back in. And I feel like, would Palace have done that if we were nowhere near it, if there was no chance of us coming back in? So I would like to think the optimist would say, actually, we were planning on maybe doing it anyway. Maybe we needed to get some sales done first, but ultimately that didn't happen. And that hopefully Havertz's injury is not a serious one. And that this is just a good addition on top. If it is the case that it is a serious Havertz injury and this is our reaction, then I'm still happy with that. The fact that we've reacted in that way, if you look directly at Spurs and the way that they've reacted to, of course, James Maddison's ACL, where they've had 3 weeks to react to it and get the Eze deal done and failed, then you can't criticise the club either way in that sense. But yeah, we'll wait and see on the Havertz one, because I do really think it's important that that's, not a long-term injury. But yeah, just buzzing for Eze.
We've got to touch on that though, haven't we? The Kai Havertz injury, because I felt like last night when the news broke and when we were all sort of buzzing and I was on a live stream, 5-10 minutes after the news broke, and I was really cheerful and really happy and sort of buzzing with the excitement around the Eze deal. But I kind of had to check myself and remind myself that we may have just lost a really key player for a long period of time. I think it's important that in all the Eze excitement, that doesn't get lost, because this must be incredibly difficult, Rory, for Kai Havertz. He suffered that injury in the second half of last season. He worked really hard to get himself back to a point where he could compete again. And in he comes. His number 9 position's kind of been taken away from him by one of the new signings. And so, you don't know how he's feeling about that. And then all of a sudden, bang, he picks up this injury that we don't know is very serious at the time of recording, but could be that. I think we do need to take a moment to think about the impact this has on Kai Havertz and also the wider impact that it has on the squad. Because to be without him, for me, it takes away Victor Gyökeres' safety net. We've been saying for a while that he needs to find his feet. It's going to take a little bit of time. This would have been the same case, by the way, with Benjamin Sesko had he been the one that we opted for. So this isn't about Gyökeres per se, but having Havertz there, someone that could step in, someone that could keep producing at the level that we need, someone that understands Mikel Arteta's ideas and this team inside out, to lose that safety net is a blow as well. So we're excited about this news, but also there's a bit of potentially bad news on the horizon that I think we do need to discuss.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, yesterday I was gutted for Havertz because, like you said, the physical transformation that he's had off the back of that injury last season, it was like, he had that injury, but instead of taking it as a big step back, he actually used it. And yeah, he's come into this season looking really good, really strong, quick, and it's a massive setback for him. And like you said, in terms of he'll be well aware that he's now competing with Victor Gyökeres, and it's kind of opened the door, I guess, to Gyökeres to really just have a free run for the next however long. Whereas Havertz came on at Old Trafford and in my opinion, kind of looked better in the sense of the way that game was and the way it was set up. And I was looking ahead to like Anfield and probably looking at Havertz maybe starting that game. So yeah, obviously as a club, we're now very reliant on Gyökeres getting up to speed very quickly. And I've no doubt that he will. I've got a lot of confidence that he's got the right mentality to actually take this on his shoulders and be like, I've got to lock in now. And hopefully Havertz, isn't too long. If it's 6 weeks, we've got an international break in September. It wouldn't be too many games, although we do have such a difficult start to the season that you would really want him there. But yeah, there's definitely an element of kind of you're celebrating the Eze deal, but in the back of your mind, we're probably weaker than we would have been if Havertz had stayed fit.
Maybe this is me sort of clutching at the positives, but do you think that actually not having Kai Havertz breathing down his neck might allow Victor Gyökeres to just relax a little bit? It's a bit like the kind of David Raya, Aaron Ramsdale thing. Once Aaron Ramsdale went, you did get the feeling, didn't you, that David Raya was a lot more chilled and a lot more relaxed and then able to express himself in the way that he wanted. Is there a potential that is the effect it has on Gyökeres?
Yeah, 100%. If we'd got into that situation where Gyökeres didn't hit the ground running, and because of the games that we've got, Arteta kind of then pivoted to using Havertz because he knows he can rely on him, then it could have set Gyökeres back a little bit. So yeah, no, 100%. There's definitely an element of, this is your job now. You're not in any danger of being replaced. Obviously, Jesus isn't close enough to a return to put any pressure on it either. So yeah, look, like I said, I think the mentality and the way his career has gone and everything that he's demonstrated in that sense, I definitely have the belief that he is going to kick on. And I think Leeds is probably a great game for that first game to be for him.
Yeah, for sure. Right, let's take it back to Eberechi Eze, where there is a lot of excitement. There's a lot of buzz, understandably so. What do you think he would bring to this Arsenal team, in your view, Rory? What is it that he adds to the equation that was maybe previously missing?
A huge amount of directness, first of all. I mean, I saw a chart this morning of sort of direct threat in the Premier League last season in terms of shots and dribble, and it was the top 5 included Saka, Madueke, and Eze. So we now got 3 of the 5 most direct players in the Premier League last season, and that is something that we've been crying out for. Then you throw in Gyökeres on top of that, who's incredibly direct too. Clearly, there is a vision for a very different style of play, and I think even at Old Trafford, we saw the attempt of implementing that, and I think it will take time. I think the squad are probably they're so well drilled into the way that we have previously played. But I think with Eze, you've got the versatility where he can play off the left. He can definitely play centrally. He can play in those central pockets that we find so difficult to access, or when we do access them, maybe the ball pops in and then pops straight back out. He's the sort of player that the ball pops in there and it's just chaos. And that's something that we've really missed. And it's been difficult to watch at times. I think there's been a frustration in the way that we've played. And when you're playing like that and the games are a little bit stale to watch, even if you're winning, if you're not winning the trophies at the end of it, the frustration begins to build. So yeah, I think with Eze, the transitional threat that he's got as well, the skill, just the ability to do something out of nothing, create something out of nothing in those sorts of games that we struggle so much against, with the mid blocks, the low blocks, where we may only get a few shots on target in a game. You feel like he's the sort of threat that you need.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think he brings an unpredictability in the final third that Arsenal just don't have enough of at the moment. You're right to highlight that at Man United, we saw signs of there being a slight adjustment in the way that we want to play, the directness, etc., etc. I think first and foremost, he just brings more quality to the squad, and I think he will bring more quality from the left hand side specifically. I know people have been kind of going back and forth on what his role is going to look like. The versatility point that you made is really important, because I think the fact that he can play multiple roles is probably what's made the club feel a little bit more comfortable actually in going and spending this amount of money on a player that's 27 years old. I know 27 isn't old, but in this day and age, these things are taken into consideration. So I do think that the fact that he can cover multiple positions has helped with that. I want to see him start from the left. I want to see him start from the left and be given that license to drift in field when it's the right thing to do, because he can shoot from distance. We've seen that time and time again. He can add greater quality to our set pieces, particularly free kicks around the penalty area. I know Declan Rice scored those 2 wonderful goals against Real Madrid, but you wouldn't bet on him repeating that on a regular basis. Whereas with Eberechi Eze, I think you've got someone that comes into the team and takes on that mantle, those free kicks from the edge of the box. All we got to do is remember to keep our players a metre away from the wall, otherwise we're going to end up kicking ourselves a bit like Palace were at the weekend. But look, I think first and foremost, he brings quality, he brings spontaneity, he brings goals, he brings assists, he brings direct goal contributions, and we need more of that. In terms of outputs, so we're talking goals and assists, numbers. Can you put a number on this, Rory? How much do you think he moves the needle? Are we talking 10 goals and assists? Are we talking 15, 20? How big an impact do you think he can have?
I think he can have a significant impact. I'd be looking really, if he comes in and starts regularly, I'd be looking at probably 20 goal contributions in all comps this season. I can really see a partnership between him and Gyökeres working really well. We know Gyökeres likes to drift out to the left. That's the kind of side that he favours, which benefits Eze if he's drifting more centrally. I think I've seen people saying, well, what are we going to do with Eze? Because he's not a left winger. And they correctly, I guess, look at where and how we've utilised our left winger previously, which is really as a touchline winger. And I agree, I don't think that would suit Eze at all. But, I don't think the club have looked at Eze and gone, right, we're gonna take this guy who thrives in central areas and throw him right on the touchline. So, yeah, I think the amount of options that we've got, if you look at Madueke playing off the right or off the left, look at Nwaneri, who can play right centrally. I think Calafiori and Miles Lewis-Skelly's 2 very different left-back options. I think there's a huge amount of variety and different approaches that we can have. And with Eze, I'm expecting 10 goals, 10 assists in his first season, I think would be achievable and an excellent addition.
What about that shirt number? We made a lot of Victor Gyökeres getting the number 14 shirt at Arsenal. There's a pretty significant number available at Arsenal. It's a famous number worn by the great Dennis Bergkamp in the past, and maybe not worn so well by others in the future. But how do you see that going? Is he going to get that number 10 shirt, Rory? And is that going to be a marketing dream for Arsenal Football Club?
It is. That is a marketing dream. I tell you what, after the amount of sales they made of Gyökeres 14 to get another round of sales for Eze 10, and look, I think coming in, especially the way he's come in, the way it's panned out with Spurs and everything, the way that the club already, the fan base unanimously loved him and wanted him, I just think it's perfect. He's got to be number 10, and I will be buying a shirt.
How much has the fact that we've sort of taken him from under the nose of Spurs kind of added to the excitement and the buzz around this? Because it did feel like we were sitting on our hands and that we were going to allow Tottenham to get a player who quite clearly had a preference for Arsenal, stretching back a long way. But at the time, as far as we were aware, and there are reports saying that Arsenal were trying to do this deal, as long as 10 days ago, we weren't aware of that. We don't know that. So when the perception was that Arsenal were sitting on their hands, waiting, maybe looking at alternatives, maybe not willing to meet Crystal Palace's valuation, and Tottenham were there sort of knocking on the door with the deal ready to go, only for Arsenal to come in at the last minute maybe and completely take him away from them and really play on the fact that they'd spoken to him before and that his preference was always Arsenal. That adds to the buzz, doesn't it? I mean, we're getting a great player, and that in itself is enough to excite a fan base. But for this to have developed and come about the way it has, it adds something to it, doesn't it?
100%, 100%. If we'd done him earlier in the window when we were first linked to him and Spurs hadn't really been, even then, I think the fan base would have massively been behind the signing and loved it because it makes so much sense. But it's added an extra 20% at least on top because of the reaction. And I think it's not like insignificant the way that the season has now started. We started, albeit with a win at Old Trafford, which should just, everyone should be buzzing about. I think the way that we played, there was a bit of negativity around the fan base. Then with the Havertz news, it felt like we needed a bit of energy injected into us. And quite the opposite with Spurs. I think they were, very happy with their performance against PSG, got up and running with a good win against Burnley, and yet everything that happened last night, it's like a balloon has been burst at Spurs, and they are really negative off the back of it. So yeah, the contrast of emotions and energy, I think, is great.
Yeah, absolutely. What does this do, Rory, for the expectation around Arsenal now? Because I've been discussing this morning, and I've said that when you look at the squad we now have, and I'm hoping that obviously the Kai Havertz injury isn't going to keep him out for as long as maybe first feared. That's the kind of noises that we're getting, and hopefully that is the case. But it kind of, signing Eberechi Eze for me takes away the kind of final excuse in terms of not going on to achieve what we're hoping to in the upcoming season. And you'd argue that this is probably the first time that Mikel Arteta's had a squad whereby you look at it and there aren't any clear gaping holes. And so that raises expectation levels. Expectation can take away enjoyment. We've seen that particularly last season, I think, from an Arsenal perspective. How much does this move the needle in terms of what people now believe Arsenal will go on and achieve over the course of this campaign?
Yeah, I think the expectation is going to be there. You will definitely see over the next few weeks a lot of talk about Arsenal spending again, because we've spent a lot of money this summer, which is good. It's great. It's what we needed to do, and I do maintain that over the last couple of seasons we have been lacking in terms of the depth of the squad. There's now really not a position I look at in the squad and go, one injury there and we're in deep, deep trouble in the way that we were previously. So the expectation has to be there to go and win the biggest trophies, and it will be there. There's no guarantees in football, right? City have a fantastic squad, Chelsea are growing a fantastic squad, and Liverpool have built on a title-winning team with a really good transfer window too. So yeah, there's no guarantees, but the feeling will be the window of opportunity doesn't last forever, and going into this season, we are now positioned as well as we could be, really.
I agree that there are no guarantees, and I agree that nothing is a given in football. So I've got to be careful with kind of how I word this. But for me, the expectation levels have gone up now. You bring in this player that many would have told you was kind of the final piece required. You looked at the attacking signings that we'd made already, and you felt that we were still probably one short. And that's in part because I think there's a lack of belief that maybe someone like Gabriel Martinelli or Leandro Trossard are going to be able to hit the levels that they did a couple of seasons ago. So that's partly where it stems from. I looked at our window, and I've had a lot of stick over the summer for maybe being less optimistic and less excited by some of the signings that we'd already made. For example, Kepa, Mosquera, Norgard, Madueke, those 4 of the 6 that we'd already made. I was looking at them and I was going, they're good signings because they add depth to the squad, but are they needle movers? And so for only 2 of the 6, in my opinion, up until this point, to have been in the needle mover category, and those 2 obviously being Zubimendi and Gyökeres, I still felt that we needed one more. The fact that we've gone out now and we've got Eberechi Eze, who absolutely is a game changer, who absolutely will raise the levels and will help Arsenal solve probably the only real concerning issue in that team, which is on that left-hand side. I know pre-season hasn't always been great, and I know the performance at Man United wasn't ideal, but you don't look at Bukayo Saka and worry about him in the long term. You don't worry about Declan Rice and Zubimendi. You certainly don't worry about the centre-halves, and I think a lot of us believe that Gyökeres will come good as well. So that was the one area, wasn't it? That left wing. What do we do there? How do we improve it? I have to say, when I heard that Trossard had been given better terms, it's a bit of a strange one, an unorthodox one in terms of you've given him that, but you've not given him an extension. All of that was a little bit strange to me, and it did, reinforce my belief at the time that actually Arsenal probably weren't going to go out and get another left winger. And I know Eze is not a left winger per se, and I know he will play in multiple roles, but to bring him in, he's almost kind of 50% of a left winger, and to also have Noni Madueke, who's coming and can be an option there as well. I think with the combination of those two signings, we've addressed that need in those positions. So feeling really good, feeling really positive, and it's always nice to open up your phone, scroll through social media, and see nothing but Tottenham Hotspur meltdown. So can't complain, can we? Can't complain at all.
No, it's been it's been very enjoyable, especially the social media world. Been getting a lot of stick from Spurs fans that they'd taken Eze from us and got a little bit ahead of themselves, some of them. So
anyway, Rory, we're going to leave it there. Thank you for joining us on Inside Gooners Extra. We had to jump on and react to the big news. Eberechi Arsenal, nearly an Arsenal player.